Sigurd Olson, working with the Izaak Walton League, the Wilderness Society, and the National Parks Conservation Association, aided the passage of the Wilderness Act, arguing that logging and other activities had destroyed the wilderness character of the Boundary Waters. The Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness is now the most visited wilderness area in the country. Sigurd Olson's leadership led to the protection of a wilderness area that has left a strong legacy of land stewardship and protecting the beauty and spirituality of the area. The area we now call the Boundary Waters was managed by the Forest Service from 1926, but the rugged character of the wilderness was dying. The Boundary Waters was slowly breaking down as more of the wild character was lost to heavy fishing and motorboat usage in the lakes and rivers. Back then, Ely, Minnesota was the largest seaplane base in the world. Olson once recorded 7 planes landing in the time it took him to canoe across Lake Agnes. There's practically no silence anywhere in the Boundary Waters, and there's very little public motivation to protect the wilderness. Ely was a little town living off damaging high-end tourism run out of large lodges and extensive logging of the white pines. There were planes that would carry you in and out of the Boundary Waters all over town. Logging was bringing motor vehicles to the BWCA and created demand for dams, which, if installed, would control water systems from Canada to Lake Superior. The moment Sigurd stepped into Ely, he felt touched by the wilderness in a very spiritual way, and he noticed how it was falling into massive disrepair. Trash, cans, bottles, and motor oil littered the shorelines and rocky lake bottoms. Many of the visitors did not show much stewardship. They visited to revel in the astounding beauty of the area, but they had little concern for protecting and conserving it. Olson took a job at the high school teaching biology, later getting a job at the junior college. He educated people about the wilderness as much as he could. One of his first victories in this fight to preserve the natural character of the area was helping pass the 1949 Presidential Executive Order that created an airspace restriction banning flights below 4,000 feet over the Superior Roadless area, the area we now call the BWCA. This was only the second air restriction prior to 9/11. The other one was over the White House. One way Olson educated people was through his writing. Olson's writings started in 1956 and ended on the day he died, and the whole time his writings were poetic and inspirational, making him very famous.
And he often used his writings as a basis or a background to explain what he was trying to do with wilderness conservation.
Sigurd was active in many wilderness protection organizations, including the Wilderness Society, where he held presidency for 8 years, the Izaak Walton League, and more than doubled the membership of the National Parks Conservation Association when he held presidency of the group for 6 years. In the 1960s, Olson was also an advisor to the Secretary of the Interior, Stuart Udall. Olson felt a special connection to the Wilderness Act as he helped craft it back in 1956 and had been fighting for it ever since. He influenced people through his popular books as well as through his grassroots organizing in his adopted hometown of Ely. In 1963, Sigurd Olson stood up on a small platform in Washington, D.C., where he spoke to the Senate Interior and Insular Affairs Committee. He was a leader in the fight in D.C. trying to convince legislators to pass the bill. Olson's testimony in front of the Senate Interior and Insular Affairs Committee was only one of the many testimonies given for the National Wilderness Act, because it had influenced the fate of not only the BWCA but 8.1 million acres of other wilderness around the nation. It had wide support in many of these areas, but the situation in Ely was very different. Olson was committed to the fight for the wilderness despite the high tensions in Ely between environmentalists and the local loggers and the high-end resort owners. Over the course of his activism for the BWCA, he was refused service at the local grocery store and he was threatened with termination from his job at the community college. People threw eggs at him and would cross the street to avoid Olson. At one point, when Olson spoke at a public hearing at the local high school, the crowd was so riled up before he went up on stage, Sigurd turned to a friend and said, "Today is a good day to die." The situation in Ely became so tense that a young man once hung an effigy of Olson outside the town hall meeting. and some drunk loggers set off a homemade bomb by the house of a fellow supporter of the bill. In Ely, people did not believe that the Boundary Waters would bring people from all over the world to their small nook of beauty. They did not believe that those people would also bring their wallets. The people of Ely were not happy with Sigurd's message. His view wasn't popular because many residents were concerned that the Wilderness Act would bring in lots of low-paying jobs, but the high-paying mining and logging jobs would be lost. He was working for the long-term survival of both the area and the economy. Even though the jobs that would come with the Wilderness Act would be lower paying, they would last as long as people showed stewardship to the land and forest. In 1964, the Wilderness Act was signed into law, creating the BWCA, or Boundary Waters Canoe Area, a 1,090,000 acre wilderness, and helping to protect another 8.1 million acres of other wildernesses around the nation, such as the Teton Wilderness and the John Muir Wilderness. In the following years, the wild character of the new BWCA was restored. It was once again quiet in the wilderness. In the following years, because of his role protecting the wilderness, Sigurd was gaining nicknames like the Wilderness Warrior, the Eco Saint, and a great leader in wilderness protection. The Minnesota Historical Society has called him a conservationist, author, and a leader in wilderness preservation. In the next few decades, Ely's economy shifted away from mining and logging as their main source of income became tourism generated by the pristine wilderness. All of the success in preservation came from the work of Sigurd Olson and many others who followed in the wake of Olson's canoe. In 1978, the BWCA Wilderness Act was signed into law, officially making the Boundary Waters Canoe Area the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. The law gave the area a whole new bill full of protection and filled in some gaps in the 1964 Wilderness Act. Olson's teaching at the Ely Community College and his inspirational writing, combined with his work to protect the wilderness, inspired a whole new generation of activists, including the late Bill Rahm, the canoe king of Ely, the owner of the largest canoe outfitter in the world. Olson urged Rahm and many more like him to build their lives around the beauty of the local wilderness. As early as 1963, Bill fought alongside Sigurd Olson for the Wilderness Act. Today, Becky Rahm, Bill's daughter, runs an organization whose mission is to keep mining out of the Northland. She continues to fight for the wilderness, inspired by her father and Olson. Becky Rahm once said, "I know in the 30s and 40s, Sigurd worked hard to train the next generation of wilderness warriors, and I know it is important to train the next generation of wilderness warriors in this fight." Today, Ely is again in turmoil as some mining companies fight to get the large sum of copper and nickel that lies under the soil. We have a stable and sustainable economy that is based on the great natural beauty, says Rahm. People will not want to live here anymore. Our water will be polluted, our air will be polluted. We're going to have a huge impact on roads, dust, and noise. It's no longer going to be the gateway to the wilderness or the end of the road. Sigurd Olson fought for the Northland that he loved so dearly. He was one of the first supporters to speak up for the beloved forests that surrounded Ely. Many people followed his lead and spoke up after Sigurd took a stand. The Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness is currently the most visited wilderness area in the country. Yet, many threats remain, such as sulfide mining. This national treasure that Sigurd Olson's leadership through his writing and activism and wilderness protection groups brought about is in danger. But his strong legacy of land stewardship and protecting the beauty and spirituality of the area.
Really, life has revolved around the stewardship of the land.
His conservation legacy is his most important legacy. I think it was the deepest and broadest piece of him.
Has inspired a whole new generation of activists who are currently continuing the fight. For example, through the influential work of Becky Rahm and others, Representative Betty McCollum has recently introduced a bill to the U.S. House that may protect the BWCA from sulfide mining and keep this national treasure available for all to enjoy into the future.
Boundary waters, you got me feeling so